And we are live. Hey, Rich, it is great to join with you today in this conversation. How are things in sunny and wonderful California?
They
Where you
they
are right now.
they're lovely here. It's actually a little gray so far, so not too sunny yet, but it's coming.
It's coming. Very nice. So, Rich, you and I met a few months ago and had a couple conversations since then. And I think we share quite a bit of similarity with regards to our stories, and which we'll talk about as we talk about how we unmute ourselves. So I'm going to read the bio that you sent me and introduce our audience to you for those of my audience who don't know you already. So Rich Oceguera is a best-selling author, award-winning entrepreneur, and host of several talk shows, including Unmute Yourself, The Divine Urge, and Heart to Heart. Rich interweaves 35 years of business development, speaking, teaching, and video production experience to provide transformational training programs and workshops designed for business owners, authors, coaches, and speakers to help them unmute their voices, confidently promote their wisdom and services, and magnetize their ideal customers. Rich graduated from Columbia College Chicago with a BA in television production and is trained extensively in spiritual, mindfulness, and ontological practices, which he combines with modern neuroscience tools to give his clients a unique edge. Rich Oceguera is the proud co-founder and president emeritus of NGLCCNY, which is New York's first ever chamber of commerce serving the LGBT and allied business community. And you can learn more and get updates on upcoming events in Rich's global community of rising visionary change makers at richawakenings.com/group. Sound good?
That was a mouthful.
Yeah, that was a mouthful. Had to press my unmute button.
Exactly. Good job.
So, Rich, tell me when did you first have to unmute yourself, and when did you that awareness that perhaps I was actually talking to my podcast co-host, which is separate from this morning, and she shared a dream that she's had where she's yelling, but all you can see is, like this and no sound. It's as if, the mute button is pressed. And she shared a dream that she had recently where this time people could actually hear her. So she had pressed the unmute button. How does that mute/unmute button play into your story?
Wow. So I would say as soon as you asked that question, and I wasn't planning on this story, but I'll tell it. It made me think of the time when I used to live in New York City, and I was working for a company that was in the real estate business as their sales trainer and manager. And there was a big conference going to happen in San Francisco. And I begged my bosses, and it was a small business. It was two owners. It was a little company. I begged them to send me to San Francisco from New York City to pay for everything, to represent our business. And they said yes, which was surprising to me. So that meant I would be delivering a presentation, which I was excited to do. And it's the day of the presentation. I'm in San Francisco. There's this meeting room that's just packed with people, all movers and shakers. At that time, especially, I felt very out of place. Like I didn't belong there. These people are better than me. They're successful. They're all these things that I wasn't in my mind. And I began to get really nervous and was dreading getting called to the podium to do my talk. And finally it's my turn, and I get up there and I look out across the room, and it seemed just packed wall to wall, and it felt like everyone was just staring at me. And I became really aware of a lot of limiting beliefs that actually have to do with racism, because I was the only brown guy in the room. Everyone else was white appearing, and these fears and doubts and worries and preconceived notions just like started to flood my mind. And I was holding my notes in my hand, and my body began to tremble visibly, so much so that I was like, you could hear, all you could hear was my papers shaking in my hands, and I became overcome with embarrassment and fear, and it was just this cascade. I could not stop it, and I walked off the stage. I never gave the talk because I couldn't speak. I literally couldn't get the words out of my mouth, and my brain just went into overdrive with crazy thoughts. And I basically, slinked off the stage. And I was early in this multi-day event, and I had to spend the rest of, the days being around these people, some of whom were in that room with me and saw that I totally failed and bombed. And it was after that moment that I realized, wow, you need to do something about this, or not. But if you want to speak, if you want to be in sales, if you want to be a leader, these are things that I had aspired to, being a leader at the time. I didn't know how that would play out later in my life. But if you want that, then you get to get over yourself, dude, and figure out how to speak, how to present, how to have confidence, how to command a room. And that was a big turning point for me, where I realized, I get, in my current language, how muted I was, and how it was time to unmute myself and to do the work. And that led me on this journey of personal, business, spiritual development to transform the fears I had, and to really practice and gain mastery in the realm of speaking and presenting, and whether it was on a stage. That was focused at first, and later it became more about also being on camera, just doing everything that I could to practice becoming a great presenter. And that involves, at least the way I did it, putting myself in lots of uncomfortable situations on stages in front of groups of people, learning, practicing, and getting the kinks out. And getting my own way of communicating, developing that. So that's what came to mind when you asked the question.
Well, I can understand why that would come to mind. Wow. And I've had similar moments, not in the same setting but similar, where I'm in front of a group of people. I remember the first time I ever spoke, and I was just a teenager probably, and I had printed material that I was delivering my talk from, and I got up there and I read it so fast that I was done before I started. I mean, it was just, and I ran back to my seat and sat down, and I'm okay, I'm done, and it was just, and many times since then, where it's just, okay, I know I've got to speak. I'm quote unquote the leader here. Everybody's expecting me to show up and say something, and I'm just like, let's just get this over with, and no mastery, no comfort, no real joy in the practice of presenting. Yeah. And now things are different. So I'm wondering, how did you put in a lot of work? It wasn't a weekend experience where you went from San Francisco and rattling papers and slinking away from the stage to you do a speaking weekend the next weekend, and suddenly boom, Rich is now on stages everywhere comfortably and presenting like a pro. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. There was no magic wand involved.
And I've been in Toastmasters for 6 years now, and in various levels, and I'm still working on it. And I have been going pretty much weekly the whole 6 years. and continue to get feedback, about what I'm doing well, what I could improve on, etc. And part of me is just like, can we just like be done with this? Just can I just be like really good right now? but it but it hasn't. There was no magic, has been no magic wand involved. It's been incremental steps, improve in this area, improve in that area, and over time we get better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so now, now it's been a while since that happened, that the story I just shared with you, and there's other turning points that are related to that happened along the way. And what I found for me was the thing that needed to be addressed the most was my brain, my mindset. Because you can take all the classes and learn from all the best teachers, and if you're still worried about fear of rejection, which is what it really boiled down to me, is like, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I mess up? What if they hate me? What if they boo? Or all the stuff, right? If I don't know how to handle that on a foundational level, then it doesn't matter how great the training has been that I've received, or even all the practice will be for naught if I'm not on a sturdy foundation. So what it really boiled down to, outside of, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many, acting classes, improv classes, speaking classes, getting a degree in television production, which involved a lot of being on camera and direct, like learning all kinds of things, right? Over years, different parts of my life. Aside from all of that, which was important and necessary as part of my journey, that's where I learned the skills. That's where I learned how to deliver messages and to create my own style. The mindset had to be addressed, and that was the piece that hadn't been fully addressed at the point of the story that I just shared with you. And that was really where I started after that experience in San Francisco. Was, how do I get rid of, or how do I create a different way of viewing myself, of who I am? And that's where the mindset work comes in. And that's the foundation of what I work on with my clients. Is it's the starting point, I should say, is around identifying the fears, doubts, worries, preconceived notions that you have. It's I have this thing called the 3 A's of overcoming fear of rejection. So awareness is the first A. Can you become aware, not being attached to it, but just observing, like, oh, this is what happens when I'm in front of a group, or here's how my body feels when when it's my turn to speak. Like, what are the thoughts that go through your mind? And this is really the practice of mindfulness. And if you're aware of them and can identify them without judging yourself for them or giving them a good or a bad attribute, just truly being unattached and seeing, like, oh, those are the little thoughts that float through my brain when this happens or in this situation, then you're able to almost disassociate from them in a way that allows you to then do something about this. And that takes you to the second A, which is attitude. And really, attitude is mindset. So I know I'm worried about looking stupid on camera, and I'll just stick to camera at this point, right? So I don't make videos. I'm speaking like how people who I work with talk. I'm not going to make a video because no one's going to watch anyways. And what if I say the wrong thing? So I'm going to stay off camera and just not reach the people that I could reach.
Right.
My message, right? But if I become aware, like, oh, look, I have these doubts, worries, and ideas of what I think people are going to think about me. Okay, I'm aware. So now what? So now I can change my mind. I can decide to change my attitude about that. So instead of letting it keep me from sharing my wisdom, my services, my offers, my gifts with the people who are looking for that help, I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to change the way I look at it and decide to be bigger than those fears, doubts, and worries. So this is like a mindset shift, right? And then the third A is, well, how do you do that? that work that has to happen now. And there's so many tools. I call this section affirmations, the third A. So how can you build new neural pathways? How can you create a new mindset that allows you to not rely on those old default ways of thinking, but instead you create a new default way that supports you? So doing actual mindset development work, using things. I have a tool that I teach called the Mind Mastery Formula, which is what I've used for a couple decades now. It's something what I teach now is a way I've created some pieces of things I've learned that allows you to create that new mindset. So that you show up confident and bold and magnetic and charismatic versus afraid and worried and self-conscious and doubtful, right? That shift can happen. It takes a little work, but if you have the right tools, you can do that. So it's basically becoming aware, deciding to change your mind, and then doing the work to create that change. And then you're just in a different place. So when I tell people now that I used to be really shy and really self-conscious, would call out sick from work because I had a pimple on my nose because I didn't want you to laugh at me, that, they don't believe me because they see the Rich now, which is not acting. It's just, I've embodied attributes of the person who I really am and who I need to be in order to produce extraordinary results in my day or on this interview or, in my class that I'm teaching, whatever, on the video that I'm making to talk about, my new program, whatever it is.
Sure.
That work got done. And so.
And I can relate so much to that. I mean, I don't know if I've shared this, but when I was in high school, one of my friends nicknamed me Beetle because I wore this really thick padded black jacket, and I would literally just kind of I never took it off. Like it could be 100 degrees outside. It wasn't because I was in Oregon, but it could have been. And I would still be hunkered up in that jacket. Don't talk to me. Don't call on me. Don't I'm not going to say anything. And that Steve and the person that I am now, where I'm speaking and presenting and leading and all this kind of stuff, like I just started earlier this year, I started my own Toastmasters club. And I think most of the people in there have no real understanding of how much things are different now than they were, even just a few short years ago, where I was the person known for not speaking, whereas now I'm known for speaking. It's such a 180-degree change. But I suspect, I wonder if you're like me in that you always felt that you had perhaps something that was trying to get expressed, but didn't have the freedom to express it, right? I don't think I have found my words so much as I've removed the restrictions that have kept me from expressing what I have had to say all along, right?
I like the way you said that. Yeah, I don't think I was, at the beginning of the journey, I was an employee of other businesses. And around that same time, actually before the story I told you, I used to work for a hypnosis company in New York City. And I was a salesperson there. And it was a very, very successful office. They had a couple locations actually. And I worked in their Manhattan office. It was the busiest one. And this was before the internet was the way that wow, this sounds like ancient history. Newspaper ads were still the primary way businesses would promote themselves because it wasn't common or even really available the way that we take for granted now to use the internet or our phones, et cetera, right? Or doing interviews like this wasn't a thing. So this company really had down and perfected the art of doing newspaper ads and testing, the way people test now for online ads, right? But this was
Mm-hmm.
paper version. And so their office was packed all the time. And I was one of 3 salespeople, and we would be booked like every 30 minutes all day long with people who wanted to see if the services we had would help them with their issues. And this is kind of a salesperson's like dream come true. Like all I had to do was sit there and talk to people and help them. And I could do that, like that kind of conversation and sales, like not a problem for me. That I was really good at that kind. But it was an expensive service, depending on which one they were going to go with. Like one of the packages with $3,000, and to me at the time that seemed like, oh my gosh, like that's just so much money. And when it came time to close the sale, right? We knew that we could help them. If they got to a place of believing that we could help them as well, then it was time to like, okay, let's get you signed up. And, you know, it's $3,000. Do you want to pay that in full? Which we were trained to ask.
Sure.
And this is the part where I would fall apart, because I got so concerned about their money. I don't even know these people. So caught up in, you know, what I thought their concerns would be, that I would stumble around asking for the sale. And here's what would happen. There would be a phone on my desk, and these were from, you know, an internal line. If my phone rang while I was in a conversation, that meant that my boss, who was, they could monitor the rooms to see how we're doing for training purposes. If the phone rang, I would hear, "What are you doing? I told you to say this, and you didn't. And if you don't say this right now, that person is not going to get help. They're going to walk out the door." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, great. We'll talk to you later." I had to pretend like I didn't. It was just a nice call.
Right.
And my trainer knew exactly what he was saying. So if I said exactly what he said, I was able to then bring the customer back into the conversation. And if I didn't do what he said, they'd walk out the door. And it was a really severe, for me, type of training. And I went home crying so many days. And the reason I went home crying is because I couldn't bring myself to change how I was viewing the whole process, because of my own limiting beliefs. And these people were trained in transformation style of thinking, and they could see where I was blocking myself. And eventually I got it. And it wasn't about just like closing every sale. It was about getting rid of the junk in my head that was preventing a person whose life was literally on the line. Because at the point that someone walked into that office, let's say they were a smoker, they've tried many times to quit smoking and failed. They've had patches and gums. They might even have been missing a lung already because of the disease. And this was their last hope, for as far as that person was concerned. If this didn't work, then they might die, or they may never stop smoking and end up getting sick, right? So their health was really what mattered most. And if I was so caught up in my head that I couldn't get over myself to just be present for that person and let them make a choice, then I was doing them a disservice. And I was doing myself a disservice, because then I wasn't going to get paid a commission. And I was then doing the business a disservice, because they weren't going to make a sale that they could have made and been able to help someone that they know they could have possibly helped, right? So it was this kind of thinking of mindset stuff. And it was those same kinds of thoughts that cropped up in San Francisco. Like, these people are thinking things about me. Like, it was all my stuff. So the mindset work is really what had to happen.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting. When I lived in San Francisco forever ago, one of my roommates was when I first moved into the house where we were roommates, she was a smoker. And during the time that I lived there, which was a couple of years, she had gone to a hypnotist and came back a non-smoker. You know, and it wasn't, you know, she would I mean, she went from smoker to non-smoker like overnight, and literally, and it was because of hypnosis. So I know that it can be a really powerful tool to help people change their lives. And I can really relate to our stories about not only about ourselves, like you talked about, being on the stage, and the rattling pages and all that kind of thing. But now your story as this in that sales conversation isn't so much, I mean, it's about yourself, but it's also presenting it as your concern about the other person, right? Worrying
Yeah.
about their finances and so forth,
Yeah.
and when the story that we're telling ourselves, either about ourselves or about other people or about whatever we're offering, when that isn't in alignment, it just closes things down. We needed, not only maybe do we need an unmute button, but we also need a redo button. Let's refresh the screen here. Woo, because we so often get in our ways like that. That we get so caught up in, well, this is the way things are. This is the way I see things. And I can't see anything else because of that. That you can't see. Like it sounds like what happened for you is you were having a challenge closing that sale because of your concerns about what they were going through, what they were dealing with. But that transformed as you developed, as you changed your mindset, as you began to change your perspective, and you saw how much of a difference that what you were offering could be for them, right? So that you were
Yeah.
able to, progress as a salesperson, and not just as a salesperson, but in helping someone change their lives in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was there at that in that particular job. Um, Along with hypnosis came NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and so I got to get trained in hypnosis and neuro linguistic programming. Even though I wasn't facilitating that wasn't my job, but they wanted us to know how the services worked, and also it helped us in our sales, and it was part of our sales training. And that was part of how I started getting into this whole world. That's also part of what I mean by ontological studies as well. Is this like, oh wow, my words, I can change my mind with language,
Yes.
like permanently. And I've actually create the way I am at any given point. Who we are is a result of the thoughts that we've been thinking and the stories we've been telling ourselves, the beliefs that we have, which inform the actions that we take, which lead to the consequences or the results that we get in life, right?
Absolutely.
It's a circle. So if you change your thoughts, you change your beliefs, that has you have different actions, and then your actions create different results. So if you don't like the results you're getting in life, then you look back to the thoughts are at the beginning of the process. And I started to learn that kind of stuff. And I was like, wow, like I have the power to change my mind.
Yes.
Is that, like, how awesome is that? And that's how little that I know that's now what I teach, right? That's basically underneath of everything that I do with my clients. It's coming from that. Like, your brain is a receptive tool that is moldable. It's called neuroplasticity in the world of neuroscience, but
Right.
it's always learning, it's always growing, it's always taking in new information, and you can be in charge of that process. And when you do, then that really shifts like how you show up in life and how life shows up for you and what you do with all of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I saw that as I was working my way out of severe depression. Is one of the things that was really instrumental in that healing process was really paying attention to the words that I was using, and those words could be, expressed, vocalized, but they were also the words that I was using just internally.
Absolutely.
What were the words that I was saying to myself about whatever was going on? And as
Yeah.
I paid attention to that language, as paid attention to the stories that I was telling myself, how I was recalling and the point of view that I was taking on those inputs, because one of the things that was also really helpful was developing a photography practice where, you know, the image that we end up with has an awful lot to do with the angle at which we shoot that photo, right? And so as I learned to change my angle, you know, literally as I'm, you know, taking photos, I also realized, you know, there's a component of that that's how I'm looking at the story, or, you know, the language that I'm using, or how I'm speaking about somebody else or thinking about myself or whatever. But that there's always opportunities to look at things from a different angle.
Yeah.
And as we do that, you know, we can totally change our lives.
Yeah, I like that analogy to photography. That's totally that's it. That's the visual version of what I said. I like your version.
So you have used the word a couple of times, and actually I used it when I read your bio, and that is ontological. What can you tell us more about what that means?
Yeah, it's really the how we use language. It's and how we use language to create our experience in life. And it's very common in the world of transformation work. So if you've done any kind of transformation work, if you've taken any kind of seminars, workshops, courses, where the promise is that there'll be some kind of transformation from where you are now to some other place that you
Sure.
deem better or more helpful. Um, the method of going through that, through examining kind of what I was just talking about, awareness, becoming aware of the thoughts that we're having, choosing that you're going to change those, not by trying to make them stop, because that doesn't work very well.
Right.
But instead using the structure of the brain that we inherently have, which is to create a new thought process. It's like installing new software into your computer, if you will,
Yes.
upgrading your operating system. That is that whole world of how that works is I've learned through ontological, practices and studies. So being involved with lots and lots of transformation training to literally change my mind, to learn how to do it for myself, and then that led to teaching other people how to do the same thing. So
Sure.
it's really like the transformation of your thought processes
Mm-hmm.
through being aware of what's there and then choosing to create something new.
Yes.
Uh, uh,
Yeah. Again, I really like the your 3 A's to overcoming your fears, or changing your perspective on how you're showing up, is the turning point that happened for me. And it was super simple. You know, with my struggle with depression and the degree at which it was being suicidal, um, the there are many turning points, but one of the massive ones was just accepting that I had that struggle. You know, rather than fighting it or feeling bad because I had it, or whatever, it was just like changing it from kind of this place of judgment or resistance into just accepting it. You know, it's like, oh, I'm depressed. Oh, I don't want to, I want this to end. uh, isn't that interesting? You know, and instead of, you know, being reactive to it, just kind of being observant of it, you know, just accepting that it was the way that it was, and then enabled me to begin to change the way that I was looking at it, you know, make a different
yeah,
choice. You know, if I, because I think, and one of the ways that I think about it is, it's like, you know, you can either spiral downward, right? You know, you can have a moment that, you know, whether you're on stage or you're just having a triggered by something or whatever, you can spiral downward and things can get worse. Or you can stop and you can say, okay, how can I make this just incrementally better? You know, and it all happens because you pushed the pause button, you know, and said, okay, let's just look at this, and not, no judgment, just accepting it exactly as it is on the screen, so to speak, you know, and then saying, okay, well, how do I want to proceed from here? because when we just accept things as they are right now, then we then are empowered to make a choice as to how we want to move either forwards or backwards from there.
Yeah, you just described it really, really beautifully. And with such a serious topic, right? When we villainize, that's the word that came to mind.
Mm.
Like, as you were saying, with the depression and even to the point of suicidal ideation, that's no little thing, right? That's a serious situation. But what happens is mostly we think, or we're trained directly and indirectly, and just in society and our culture, that when that depression is bad, and that's not right. It's not normal. Something's wrong. There's that world of it, and then there's like, oh, you're not depressed. You're just having a bad life.
Yeah, just go out and get some sunshine, or
Right.
get an ice cream cone or whatever. It's just like,
So there's like the minimizing of it, and it all boils down to just like people just don't know how to be with this stuff, right? And it could be any disease, it could be any condition, it could be any situation in life. We don't always know how to just be with things that are very uncomfortable. So we'll try to compartmentalize it by minimizing it, or inflaming it, or villainizing it. Like, it's just humans being human.
right.
But the worst culprit of all of that is really what we do to ourselves out of just trying to cope. And so when we do any of those minimizing, villainizing, emphasizing, it sort of inflames the situation and doesn't make it really any better, because we're attaching, you were saying, like, being unattached to the situation, just like it is what it is.
Mm.
So that's that can be hard for people to learn in the beginning.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's why in the beginning, my depressed periods lasted literally years. And now they last moments. It's
Yeah, but it's such a skill, and that's a great example of us taking charge of our thoughts by observation. Just you said, isn't that fascinating? That's such a great question to ask when something happens that we want to judge, negative or positive even. Wow, isn't that fascinating? I love that question. But that takes away the emphasis on judgment, and then we're able to do something with it or not.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But it gives us choice. It
Yes.
gives us, enough of a pause for us to just to not just be triggered by it. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, like when I've smashed my thumb with a hammer or something, the my instant response is not, oh, well, that's fascinating. It's, damn it, that hurt.
That's funny.
But when we can just be there with the pain or the frustration or whatever, and not get triggered by it, it's we have the opportunity to create something better because we're in that place, rather than things getting worse because
Yeah.
we throw the hammer across the room and it hits the window, and it just total downward spiral from there. It's
Yeah. So and that's the whole thing of mindfulness. And it's why it's a practice, because it takes practice to get to that place of isn't that fascinating? Depending on the situation, I would scream too. There would be lots of words coming out of my mouth if I hit my thumb with a hammer. But yeah, so when we're in that place of observation, then it's like almost like a neutral zone.
hmm.
We're not giving the thing too much power, and we're not all caught up in our emotions about it. It's just like, okay, here's a thing. What am I going to do about this?
Right.
Which may include I should do nothing. which is another massive you could do a whole show just on that one and never scratch the surface of that topic. But all of this kind of observation is the way that we control or have the power in the situation to choose rather than react, or so to respond versus react to a situation, so we can make choices about how to move forward from it, whatever that
so if we want to unmute ourselves, rather than reacting because either we get a unfavorable comment or or nobody's watching when you go live or whatever it may be, there's all kinds of things that trigger us. I find it interesting how many people, including myself, are in the space of helping people find how to share their stories, how to show up on cameras, how to and when people list their number one fears, public speaking is at the top of the list. It's all about stuff of, how do I unmute myself? How do I express myself in a way that, that moves things forward rather than, we curl up in a ball and, want to hide and slink away from the stage or from the page or from whatever. So how do we show up? How do we choose in the moment to make friends with the camera or the microphone or the page or whatever it may be?
Yeah, I love how it is, you said the stage or the page. I love that. That it is all the same, right? So as business owners, as thought leaders, whatever we're calling ourselves, visionary change makers. I like to talk about visionary change makers.
Nice.
If you believe that there's a reason why you're here on the planet that is well beyond like going to work to make money so you can pay the bills and go to work, make money to pay the bills, right? Like there's something bigger. There's something, you have that sneaking suspicion that you're on the planet for a reason, and that's to make a positive impact in other people's lives some way, somehow, right? Mostly what we all have inside of us. If anyone who's in your group or my group, that's almost by default a commonality, right? And then how we express what we do in the world is going to be different across the board. But we all have that, like, oh, I want to help people. I want to make a difference. I want to improve people's lives. And it's usually because we've transformed something in our lives, and now we want to help other people not have the misery that we went through to get to where we are now.
Right, exactly.
Right. So if that's the premise, what I believe is that when we forget or are not connected to that internal drive, which is about other people, it's not about us, right? It's about over there, what could happen for someone else if they were able to get support, the way we've been supported at some point in our lives or currently. If we forget that, then without a doubt, you will be afraid to look in the camera. You'll be afraid to start the story. You won't get on the stage. You'll be more concerned about how your hair looks, how your makeup looks, what your outfit is doing, what the background looks like, whether the gardeners are outside blowing, which they're probably about to do right now, by the way. The machines, like all of those things. Oh my God, the dog's barking, or I didn't have enough coffee yet, or I have bags under my eyes, like all the stuff that goes through people's heads.
Yes.
That has them come back from pushing the red button to go live on their phone or webcam, or doing the story, writing the story that they're supposed to be working on, right? When we are living in that realm of fears, doubts, worries, and preconceived notions, it's a sure sign that we've become disconnected or have forgotten that what we're really here for is not our own self, our own ego. It's about other people and the transformation that could happen in their lives. So that's a starting point. So remembering, or maybe I'm using the word remembering because I'm assuming that at some point you were really connected to this, right? But maybe you haven't even gotten that connected yet. It depends on your stage of where you're at in your story, right? In your business story.
That's a good
But
point.
if you get if you take the emphasis off of this and think about who's out there on the other side of the camera lens, on the who's going to be on the other side of your story, because you've written it now, right? And now they're reading the work that you're doing. If you put the emphasis over there, then that takes so much burden off of you. It really frees you up because you're doing your work in the world versus worrying about how you look, what you said, did you do it right, did you get it wrong? Because none of those things really matter, because your people are going to find you. The people who want what you have are going to come across your path. They're going to start to be part of your world, and they're not really there because they like your hair color. They're there because something you do or who you are or how you are feeds them somehow. It resonates with them, and they want some of what you have. But that can't happen if we're all caught up in ourselves and cutting ourselves off from our audience out of fear.
Yeah.
And I boil all of that down into fear of rejection somehow, right?
Yeah.
So so when you do that work to deal with the rejection and the emphasis, the heavy emphasis that's getting placed on what ifs. Well, what if it goes right? What if you say the most brilliant thing? What if one person who watched your video just got their life transformed and now they want to, be a private client with you? Or who cares about that part? I mean, yes, we want that, but maybe you said something that sparked something that changed their life and you'll never know about it.
Yes.
We never know who's watching or who's reading, all right? But our job is to put it out there.
Yes, exactly. And speaking of that, I can't tell you how many times back when I was sharing all kinds of photography and different things, I would have a friend who would frequently come up and say, I just love what you're sharing. And I'm like, I had no idea you were sharing. I had no idea that you knew I was sharing, because you never like, you never comment, you never do anything other than what you're doing, like physically in person. And I've had so many cases like that where where I thought nobody was paying any attention, and it turns out that it was something that really changed their lives. It's not just theoretical, it's literal. And so and we get so caught up in, well, my numbers aren't high, or it was a bad day, or my hair was a mess, or whatever. But if we can just focus on the fact that we're here to make a difference in someone's lives, and we never really know how that's going to show up. We never know when someone's actually watching or when they're not watching, especially in this environment, when we're doing Facebook Lives or whatever, because we can't see the other side of the screen. We can't see what's happening out there. But if we trust that, whatever's calling us to do what we do is also calling whoever it is that is our audience to hear what we're doing, then things will work out. And so it's a matter of not only the practice of delivering, but also the practice of trusting that it's all going to work out somehow.
Yes. Yeah. And that's you kind of just described the program I have called Camera Confidence 101. It's very much like that. It's yes, I can teach you which camera to use and how to have a nice background and which ring light you should use, and all of those things are great. But if you're not, if you're still gonna hide, who cares? I can give you the perfect 30-second introduction formula, or teach you the kinds of videos that you can make that position you as an expert. Like, all of that stuff is great. But if we don't deal with this here, the mindset piece first, then it doesn't matter. And so that's it's uncomfortable not knowing who's watching and not getting this immediate response. But if we're trusting that, if we're doing the work, if we're putting ourselves out there, and we're sharing quality content, and keep doing it with consistency, then people will start to notice, and we won't always know when and how and which platform they saw our stuff on, but people are watching, and not everyone is liking and commenting and telling you how amazing you are. And when you're confident enough in yourself and the work that you're doing, and that you believe it has value, then you know that it's reaching out there, and someone's going to be reached and touched by it, and it starts to create like a snowball effect, where you will start to see results from it. And it may come in ways that are unexpected or surprising. But it really goes back to like what we've been saying is, it's about those people that we said we're here to serve. And, for someone out there may need to hear this. Maybe who you think you're supposed to serve isn't who you're supposed to serve. Maybe that was someone else's idea. And I've had whole career periods where it was someone else's idea that I should be in real estate. So I did, right. And I became in the top 10% of New York City real estate agents in a recession. But I hated it. I hated it every day. I hated doing the thing. And I could not imagine myself, years into the future, showing people apartments in New York City. Like, I couldn't see it. And so I one day made a decision, I'm done, even though I was successful at it. And that's the thing with small business owners in particular, course creators, coaches, healers, people who are doing this kind of, very human-based work. You better love it. You better know that you're committed to it, from inside your heart first. Yes. And not because someone told you should do that, or your skills would make you a good coach or whatever.
Yes.
You got to live in it. And when you do, when you're in from your heart, then your authenticity will come out. And if you're not really in alignment with it, then that's cool. Do yourself a favor, do the people a favor, and go find out what that is that you're really meant to do.
Absolutely. I'm totally with you. And I mean, that similar situation, different. And when I was in corporate accounting,
oh, that's right, you're an accountant.
and looking 20 years in the future, doing what I was doing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot do this. And so the fact that the floor underneath me fell apart at the time felt awful, but in retrospect, hindsight, it was like the universe doing me a major favor,
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. I mean, it's got to be more than just the paycheck or the the accolades or whatever external rewards you may be getting. That it's got to come from the heart, come from within. And when you do, it's much easier to press that unmute button.
Right? Yes. Exactly.
Well, Rich, I want to thank you for your time today. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm sure that just as we were talking a moment ago, that the people who need to hear what we have to share will have the opportunity to benefit, and hope maybe we've changed a life. And if not, maybe someone who's listening now or in the future will also change a life. We never really know how this works. All we can do is trust that it all works.
Exactly.
Thank you for your time today. And do you have anything in final that you would like to share with our audience, including how they might connect with you and find out more about what you are doing in the world?
Sure. Yeah. So one thing I'd love to offer your peeps is I've talked a lot about mindset, and I use the words mind mastery. One of the things I love to teach is called the mind mastery formula, which is a simple series of three questions that you ask yourself that sets up your day or the call or the talk or whatever it is, the writing that you're about to do, whatever task at hand. You can use this formula to consciously create your mindset and it's beyond just saying an affirmation. You're actually programming your brain with the attributes, the positive attributes that you want to embody, so that you produce extraordinary results from the task at hand. And it's the one of the core tools that I've used to go from being that shy, inhibited, self-conscious guy that comes across the way I come across now, from the inside out. So I have that as a gift for anyone who would like to use the mind mastery formula. You can get that by going to my website, richawakenings.com/gift, richawakenings.com/gift, and that'll get emailed to you. And then you mentioned it earlier, I do have a private group. Steve's part of my private group too, so we're mutual group buddies. And in that group, I do trainings on things like mindset, mindfulness, how to be confident on camera, things along those lines. And so I have a video training on the mind mastery formula in my private group. So you can get the handout by going to richawakenings.com/gift. And then you can actually watch a video if you want to participate in the community. You can see the training over there.
Awesome. Thank you, Rich. It's been a delight.
Thank you. Grateful to you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. All right.